All right, I said we're going to hop into some comeback talk, and that's indeed what we got first. The Vikings came back from 33-0 at halftime, and one of the unsung things about it is that with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter, it was 36-7. So it's not like the comeback started, gangbusters in the third quarter. It took a while to get going even then, but it did come to fruition, and the Vikings won the NFC North, guaranteed themselves a playoff game, hopefully two, and here we are. Sal Spice, you went through an array of emotions like we all did. So describe them. Tell me about your day on Saturday.
Well, the day was good. Went into the day feeling really confident. Had a great time at the tailgate, even though it was cold. Left the tent up in preparation for the celebration of the NFC North title. First time in 5 years. First time since 2009 since Aaron Rodgers was healthy for an entire season and they won it.
True.
So, yeah, couldn't have been more excited. Then it quickly turned to not even wanting to be there and to trying to figure out how I was going to get to the roof to jump off. and so I was not thrilled. I wanted to actually leave early because I just didn't see any way how they could even come back based on their play and also the amount of points that they were down. I didn't see that happening, and it was kind of windy, so I was worried about my tent blowing away, and why would I put myself through that? So, but every time I requested that we leave, my friends just ignored me. Like they just didn't even acknowledge that I was speaking. So that didn't happen. And I didn't think that they would actually pull it off until the kick went through, to be honest with you. I thought all of this is just a waste of fucking time. I thought. I thought people were standing and I was just like, I'm not going to even yell for this. Like, I'm not losing my voice. I mean, eventually I did.
What I contemplated, Sally, kind of like you in overtime was, so I'm gonna drive home 4 hours thinking about the greatest NFL comeback that ended in a tie. And
yes!
I was trying to figure out what type of emotions, how you would even get motivated by that. It would have felt like a nothing burger. Like, oh, okay, so we didn't lose.
Well, and my friend that I was sitting next to was the same friend that I was with in Lambeau when they tied in 2018. So I'm like, oh, great. Like, I know what's going to happen.
Brian, it sounds like you did some drinking on Saturday. The
I did.
Yeah.
I was looking like, okay, every time I come up for a game, it's like very disappointing.
For context, the last game he came to was the Cowboys game.
Right. So I'm like, gosh, every time I come up for a game, at halftime, it's like 30-0. I'm like, how did this happen? So like I kind of checked out for a little bit. And
yeah.
Like, well, come have a drink with me and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it started to turn around. I'm like, wait a minute. Now we're only like 8 points away and stuff like that. And I'm like, damn, we have a chance to win. And there was one person there who kept who low-key was like calling it out, like, oh, it's going to end up going overtime and they'll win overtime. And I was like, what? Like somebody was calling out in the third quarter when it still looked like it was a faraway thing. But he ended up being right. He called like 2 or 3 things out that ended up being actually accurate. We were looking at him like, how did you know that? But
what were you in town for?
Last minute they asked if Chester Taylor and I could host a watch party, but I felt like it would have made more sense if you did it when it was an away game. But last minute they asked us, and they even when Tom West found out we were in town, they're like, why are y'all trying to come to the game? And it was like, they have us down the street actually. So we did that. Yeah, I felt like if I was at the game, I'd have probably left. So I'm kind of glad I was stationary somewhere and still could just continue to watch the game.
They said 20% of people that were there left at halftime.
Yeah,
it benefited me because I moved up like 30 rows. So
yeah, I think there's when stuff's going that poorly, and you go to a lot of games like a season ticket holder, you kind of have this artificial test. Like, all right, if they don't score on this drive, there's no way they can come back, and it's a waste of my time. And I think when they came out and looked flat on the first drive, it was like nothing has changed, and that was kind of the catalyst to send folks home. And
well, especially if you got to drive, I mean, like you,
Yannick, you went to the Vikings game in England and saw them defeat the Saints, but this was your first game stateside. What did you make of it, good sir?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, once in a lifetime experience to watch the game like that. I thought first half what a terrible game to attend. Yeah, and then in the third quarter, okay, now it's not embarrassing, and then they made the comeback. So just incredible.
I recently bought a batch of 4 more season tickets because my son's getting into the Vikings and football. And so this was our first game sitting in that spot. And I sold my 2 seats, my regular seats, to a coworker that I used to work with here in Sioux Falls because of weather. And I don't think he had a 4-wheel drive. He couldn't make it. And so he messaged me and said, yep, I couldn't make it. And so in the first half, I'm like, what a lucky son of a bitch. You know, he didn't have to come sit through this. And then I remembered him about 3 hours later and thought, oh no, this was, I think he goes to one game like every 5 years the way that he was talking. And I was like, oh man. And I don't even think he resold the tickets. I don't know if he knew that was allowed or whatever, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of stories like that. Kind of like the Miracle. There were some folks that left that too. Ron, you said you FaceTimed everybody you knew.
Pretty much. Like, I don't, yeah. Yeah, B-Mac, like I said, when we made that we tied it up, you know, because I knew you were in town and I, you know, wasn't able to make it out there. So I was like, I gotta talk to, and I had buddies over, we were watching it. None of us could believe what was going on. We one of my buddies, we were doing shots every time the Vikings scored. So they were coming pretty heavy in the second half. But yeah, we were all, even just watching it, we were just like, we made the jokes like, is there any college bowl games on or whatnot? And it's just like, but we, you know, watching it at home is also different because it's, you know, you want to tune away, but it's also like, all right, at least you can watch it, hear what they have to say, especially with Burleson on the call. He does such a great job. You know, kind of hearing what they have to say on the national media side about the team. And I just want to see them at least show some life. So even after, you know, like you said, after the first drive, not scoring, and then it's like, oh God, here we go. And then, all right, we get a score, and then they get a field goal. Now it's still back at, you know, 4-score game or whatever the number is. And then you're mentally doing the math of, well, if we score a point every minute is essentially what it kind of, if we outscore them by a point every minute, we're back in this. But not once did any of us ever really think it was a legit possibility. So, you know, it was rubber chickens flying around the basement here. Like this was as the kids were playing with them, just excitement, the terrible whistle blown dead. Like at that point, those things started to anger a lot more because it's like the refs are really going to screw up this opportunity of the comeback. So, but no, it was man, I can't imagine what it was like at the stadium. Like if I were there, I'm surprised that more than 20% of the people didn't leave, to be honest, because, you know, 33 points at halftime. I mean, the greatest comeback in NFL history, but also just the way it was transpiring. There was no life. All phases were just getting outmanned, and but good for the team to fight. You've heard Patrick Peterson saying that we only need 5 touchdowns, but it's almost like the cliche part of it. And Brian, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and I'm being on that side of the ball, but there was belief behind it, like every step of the way. And I think KJ Osborne really sparked it. So just with his play and fighting for extra yards in that scoring drive, just it's hard to, still unbelievable.
Bryant, if a future Hall of Fame cornerback told you at halftime of a 33-0 game, all we need is 5 touchdowns, would you laugh him out of the room, or would you say, you know what, he's right?
I'm like, well, I need you to stop somebody. That's what I mean.
True.
The defense telling us what we need. You know, okay, we get those 5 touchdowns, but we don't need them to score anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Slow down the bleeding a little bit.
Sally, I've got to ask you before we move on to some Pro Bowl stuff. So the evolving queen of enthusiasm that you are, I am still scarred by the first half, and I can't shake that. And I was delighted to see that that's what the head coach has been studying this week, is how they got there. But are you worried as well that that DNA lives in there, that it could just show up in any game?
Well, I mean, we've seen that DNA in almost every game, just not to that extent at some point in the game, right? Specifically the third quarter, always. So, yeah, of course. I mean, and as we've said, several times, they're going to be playing stiffer competition come January. So I don't think you can't help but be concerned about it.
But I'm gonna say on the flip side that they also have the DNA to turn it on when they need to. So if they can find out how they can do that for the whole 60 minutes of the game, I mean, that would be you might get your blowout. You know what I'm saying?
That's the holy grail. We've been waiting for that since week one.
Right.
Sally hexed everything. And that's just what we have to live with from here on out, or at least until they.
Yes, I did. I forgot what you were talking about.
Yeah. You said, I wish it was a little bit more exciting, and it was like a hex because it's on the Giants. An interesting note that when they beat the Commanders Sunday night, they put themselves in a commanding driver's seat to reach the postseason. So even if they lose this game, they're still sitting pretty, which also means there is a very realistic chance that the Vikings play the Giants twice in 3 weeks at the same building, because the Giants would probably be considered the mathematical front runner to face the Vikings in round one of the postseason. The other teams to keep an eye on are the Commanders, Seahawks, Lions, and Packers. Yannick, Pro Bowl. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Zadarius Smith, and Andrew DePaula. Those are the 5 non-alternates. They are in the game, and then there's also a handful of alternates. You saw those revealed on Twitter about an hour and a half ago. What'd you think of those, Yannick? Who got snubbed?
For sure, Christian Deriso. I mean, he's playing at an elite level. I think he should be in. Maybe Kenny Mwangu. His return touchdown. He sparked the game against the Patriots. And third one, maybe Ryan Wright. His punts are incredible. He's still without a touchback this season. So, and he pins down the opponents at their end zones. And he's just incredible. I think those 3 should be in.
And is it your understanding with the alternates that those will be probably... those guys will be given the nod, because it's not like players need to take the game off anymore because of the Super Bowl. I haven't quite understood the new rule about alternates.
Yeah, I'm not sure about it.
Okay, we'll have to.
Wait, what do you mean? So,
well, they don't have the Pro Bowl anymore, and usually at the end of January, a bunch of players would bow out of the Pro Bowl because they had the Super Bowl, and then
is it still the week before?
I think the skills competition is, yes, they have they've totally revamped the Pro Bowl. And so there's no longer the game, but they have the recognition, which was announced tonight. And then they have a slew of alternates, but I'm trying to figure out, I'm guessing that those dudes are just considered Pro Bowlers, but I don't know for sure yet.
It's weird because I think if for some reason the alternate ends up making it because someone backed out, then they're considered Pro Bowlers, which is why it's kind of misleading.
Okay. But why would anybody back out? There's nothing to back out of.
Super Bowl, right?
But there's no
Or
game.
A lot of people just take. Yeah, but still everyone has backed out the last couple of years since it's been changed.
Well, this is the
and
first
also
year without
just
a
people,
game.
Well, they did skills competition last year.
They have it this
Or
year.
was that like a Pro Bowl weekend and they did skill? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There's no football game anymore between the Pro Bowlers.
Okay.
And I was
don't know,
wondering,
maybe as many won't, but I still think, you want to be resting, or if you have an injury,
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe it's the dudes that are elected to the Pro Bowl will go to the event, and some just won't even go to the event because they're getting ready for the Super Bowl, which could be the Vikings. So all this could be moot, right? Anybody?
That's what our girl Kaylee said. I'm going to steal her line. She said, I don't care who made the Pro Bowl because no Vikings will be in it.
Ron, were you going to say something?
No, I just think it's weird. Yeah, like with the alternate and stuff. What we'll see what that looks like. But how does Harrison Smith not make it? Like, as I was trying to look for the like actual list of who the players are. I mean, even though I know he missed a couple games, ironically both Lions games, but doesn't he still have 5 or 6 interceptions on the year? And he's one of those repeatable or those names that the recognition alone, he's in that category and he's putting up the numbers alongside of it. So I don't understand that.
They gave it to, let's see, Quandre Diggs, Buda Baker, and the Hufanga dude from the 49ers.
I mean, I guess I get Buda Baker by name because he's been one of the top, but I don't know. I think that's if there's a snub. Now, I'm not going to say that, many of our defensive players, I'm not going to argue that many of them need to be there because, the vaunted 31st ranked defense. But Harry's putting up the numbers, a Hall of Fame career, and nothing.
And then Darisaw lives in a disadvantageous spot because it's Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, and Tristan Wirfs. So
yeah,
dudes that
if he
already
took
have
steroids like Lane Johnson, maybe he could get it. But
yeah, so at least they're alternates. We'll see.
Bryant, have you ever been in the Pro Bowl?
Once.
But how did it feel when you got in? Were you excited, or do players just not really care about that much?
I feel like how Darisaw feels. I always had people like Flozell Adams, from
Walter Jones.
Walter Jones, Flozell Adams, and you had the guy from the Redskins at the time. They were all older than me, so they all kept going. And they went missing. You had Orlando Pace was in my thing at the same time. What was the guy's name?
John Runyon, or
no? I'm talking about he was at the Redskins.
Samuel.
Yeah, Samuel.
Right? Yeah.
So Samuels, Flozell, Walter Jones, Orlando Pace were all in the NFC, and they all kept going, and they would never miss. So I was alternate for like 3 different times, and then I finally made it. But like they would never miss. So it's like,
but also, why back then even too? It's like one, and it's more so on the defensive
me and
side,
Chad
but
Clifton
also
were always alternates.
right. But also like same with offensive linemen. Typically, it's only left tackles. It's only and on defense, linebackers are only edge rushers because they're the only ones putting up numbers. So you'll never see a 4-3 outside linebacker in there because DeMarcus Ware's out there and he's getting 14 sacks a year,
right,
even though he's not really a linebacker. And back when they had the game, you weren't allowed to play a 3-4. You had to play a 4-3. You couldn't blitz. You had all these rules. So I'm surprised that even now, as they're doing it without a game, that they're still looking at it that way.
I feel like I feel like they give offensive linemen a little bit more stats now. Like they didn't have stats for us.
Yeah,
so like everybody, they gave us a paper when it came time to vote, and you looked to see who had the most sacks. It was a paper that you could look at, see who had the most sacks, and some people it just was based off of like who always go. So for Darisaw, it'll just be being consistent. I'm pretty sure, was he an alternate?
Yeah.
Right, so he'll be an alternate a couple times until like those older guys kind of get out of the way, and then he'll get his chance. Because to me, for the most part, offensive linemen, it's like there's no real stats, so they just keep picking the same people until. I remember one year I was an alternate behind Orlando Pace, and it was like you missed like a big chunk of the season, and like you know what I'm saying. And it was like, how am I still alternate behind you? You missed half the season, but it's just there's no stats. They don't really know that. They know he played, so. Hopefully that doesn't happen to him for as long. Like hopefully, somehow there's a breakthrough. But as long as those older guys are around and people are used to them, they'll keep going.
That's extremely valid point, Bryant, because even now there's not a lot of offensive line stats. Thankfully, we have Pro Football Focus, and then we have pressures allowed. But in your era, there was nada. And I remember that. Yeah. I remember that as a youngster trying to figure out, like, is so-and-so good? Well, I'd have no way of knowing. I just have to figure out with my eye test. So,
right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a very valid point that it was probably just a straight popularity contest.
Yeah, it was.
Until we
But I like the fact that the NFL's kind of transitioned and is giving some type of recognition now to the offensive line. Like they're showing them do pancake blocks. They're showing things that make you say, oh, okay,
I hear
Imagine
they're speaking
a world
about him more often. Like even Trent Williams, they speak about him. They gave him a 99 or something like that. Like they're speaking about offensive linemen more often. Like Told you, only time you heard about offensive linemen, you jumped off sides and had a holding penalty as limit on you.
I can't imagine a world where Bryant McKinney isn't most popular.
Yeah. If I was on that team, I would be. I have to be on everybody's team.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into some of the Giants stuff. So here's the deal on the Giants. If you think that the Vikings are overachievers or frauds, let me introduce you to said Giants. I won't call them those words, but they are certainly have a better record than you would think based on their roster talent and their numbers in general. They have one of the worst defenses in the league by any metric that you want to point at. Per EPA per play, expected points added, they're 29th. Same thing for DVOA. Their biggest weakness is stuffing the run. They don't do that very well. But the Colts game kind of showed you can throw stats out the window. But the Giants are, like I said, in the driver's seat. They're probably going to reach the postseason. That's because the Washington Commanders and Seattle Seahawks have a gruesome schedule upcoming, especially this weekend because Seattle travels to the Chiefs and the Commanders play the 49ers. So the Giants are sitting pretty. They haven't beat the Vikings since 2013. The last time they did was the Josh Freeman game, and the Vikings have won 3 times since. On another note, Kirk Cousins historically struggles against the Giants. He's thrown 10 touchdowns, 14 picks, and that's a very upside down stat line for that man. So, Yannick, I'll start with you. I know you're optimistic about this game in general in terms of prediction and whatnot, but what do you think the Giants, how do you think the game starts? Is it going to be an ordinary game? Does somebody rush out to a lead or what?
I think the Vikings will just get a lead and win it from the beginning. I think they are just better. The Giants are 2-4-1 since week 8. They have lost against good teams, but they still lost. We beat some good teams, so I think they're the better team, and especially Dalvin Cook will run on them. They have Dexter Lawrence at defensive tackle, but their rushing defense is still a disaster. So I think Dalvin will have a big day.
And find a gigantic piece of wood to knock on if Dalvin Cook is indeed upright and going, which he's not on the injury report or anything. This would be the most games he's played in a season. And at his old as age yet, obviously, he looks like he's on pace to play most of the season, which is the first of its kind. Sally, the last time we had a grandiose comeback against the Bills, we played like shit the next week. Are you fearful of that at all?
Look, regardless of this season, I'm always fearful of it. Last week was a big reminder, but when it's an important, game like winning the NFC Championship, I think it's going to be a close one again. Of course, why would I think anything differently? So, yeah, and the high of last game, the emotional, carry on of that, plus knowing they've already won the division, you don't want them to be complacent. It's all possible.
Ron, do you foresee another nail biter, or do you have them beating somebody by more than 8 points for first time in 3.5 months?
I don't know if I see that at all, just because the way that games have been played, regardless of how good of a win it is or whatnot. So it's hard to go against the closeness of it. But man, I'd like to say that we're a significantly better team than the Giants. I mean, they are well coached, and they have obviously Barkley. Their offensive line's played better and a good defense. But as long as Daniel Jones is the quarterback, they're not going to ever concern me. Other than his mobility, which still that's pretty baffling that no team can figure that out either. But man, I do think this is the week that they win by more than 8. And I'm going to look stupid come next week when, we win by 5, because of something dumb that happens. But like you guys alluded to, it's the Dalvin, he's looking explosive. He's making, especially the way that he ran angry last week, in the second half, him and KJ Osborne, they did not want to go down, regardless of the score. So I see them coming out, and I think the whiteout will be a nice touch, because players get amped up for stuff like that. It'll be like a college atmosphere type game, and as long as if they don't screw themselves over, with a block punt, a fake punt, all compounding dumb stuff, they should roll. But again, I'll believe it when I see it, even though I'm saying it.
Bryant, the Giants employ a top 2 running back, probably anywhere between the 15th and 20th best quarterback, and then some good defensive playmakers, but nothing to write home about. What do you expect from this Giants-Vikings game?
I expect the Vikings to not have a dead first half like they did last week, and I feel like that's a big emphasis this week. So I expect them to come out and score within the first 2 or 3 drives. I can't see them going a whole quarter without scoring, especially after what they did last week. I feel like that's a big emphasis. Get out here and score early. So do I think it's going to be close? I can see it being like a 10 to 12 point game. I can see that. And just kind of just showing that we aren't, lax or, getting too comfortable. I mean, that needs to be the attitude, in the locker room. So hopefully, and no player wants to keep going through that. You don't have the opportunities to keep, coming back like that either. It's like, okay, we got away with one, but let's not keep putting ourselves in that position.
So what last weekend when they came back against the Colts, the next day, the Buccaneers lost to the Bengals, which guarantees the Vikings the number 3 seed, no matter what. That means all the Vikings are playing for right now is the number 2 seed. And the reason that's important is because it would guarantee a second home playoff game if they win the first one. The Niners are nipping at their heels. If the Vikings have to finish one win ahead of the 49ers, otherwise the tiebreaker probably goes to San Francisco. So that's really the only thing. The division's locked up, and this is kind of a teaser that the Bears game in Week 18 could be meaningless, and that would surprise nobody because it's meaningless every year. Sally, before I forget,
it's not.
What isn't?
It's not meaningless every year.
Like 5 out of 6 it has been.
No, in 2018 it was a win and in, and they lost.
And before,
and the year before that there was a similar situation. It was for seeding. They would have had a higher seed if they beat them.
And what
it
year?
Almost always matters. Let me look it up and I'll tweet it.
I respectfully will tell you that it hardly ever matters because it's the game that I always end up not going to because it's decided. Like they're either resting or it's just for vibes. Certainly the 2018 game was for all the marbles, so to speak, but the rest really haven't been since US Bank Stadium opened.
Weren't there were 2 years in a row where it mattered?
See?
Well, 2019 wasn't one of them. So it must have been 2017 trying to get the number 1 seed.
Maybe.
Hold on. I'm looking. Keep talking.
I can guarantee you 2019 was meaningless because the starters were rested. 2020, it was already kaput. Last year, it didn't matter at all because people wanted them to tank. Both of these last 2 games, people wanted them to lose for the draft pick. So that's 3 years in a row where it hasn't meant anything. And 2016 was the year they did the divest sign and they were already eliminated. So maybe 2017.
Was it 2019 for seeding when they played?
No, because they rested starters.
I think it was 2017.
All right, we'll figure it out. No one wants to listen to us no one wants to listen to this. We'll figure it out right now.
I want to ask you about the whiteout, Sally. Do you think that we pull this off as fans, or do you think it's something too unique for us to get behind?
I really hope so. I don't know. I feel like I see more people talking about it than I would think. And I went to a Gophers game earlier this year that they did like the checker pattern, and I had zero faith in those people because majority of their fans are like boomers, and they actually pulled that off. So that gives me some hope. And plus, Ryan Skullbros won't shut up about it. So
I do think that I think the concept is great. Like it's always, cool, especially like when you look at how it's done in college. But I feel like in something like this, like they should give like a t-shirt for every fan. So then there is zero excuse at the game. Like, if you show up, and you're wearing, your purple jersey, because that's the only Vikings jersey you have, like the Vikings make enough, the NFL makes enough money where they can afford to put, a Hanes t-shirt with NFC North champs or something on it, on each seat. And I always think that's the part that it's like, why don't they give towels and stuff at playoff games and whatnot.
Yeah,
so.
the Vikings actually aren't terribly stingy about giving away cool stuff. I mean, the mullets would have to be more expensive than a basic T-shirt,
True.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess now that you've said that I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was a T-shirt, but then you have to do with sizes. How you just get everybody huge and then hope for the best.
I'm sure that they don't care how it fits. It's
Yeah.
it's the ambiance part of it. So throw
Yeah.
everyone in an XL, whether it fits or not. And
Yeah.
just like with the T-shirts they throw out or give away at Timberwolves games, if they're
True.
all just ginormous or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to our seat and there's something there.
Okay. Cool.
Right?
Yeah. If they really want to do this, because the Vikings will be in all white, and those of us who are obsessed with it and attendance will be. So
You know what I was just thinking though? Remember when KJ told us that the lights in US Bank Stadium sometimes mess with you? You got to get used to it.
Yeah.
Now the lights are going to be bouncing off that white end zone
Oh yeah.
because they painted the end zone white. Like, it's something to think about.
Oh,
That's all I'm saying.
a little Metrodome nostalgia.
Any chance that those, and I know they're novelty hats like for signatures and stuff, but any chance of white helmets coming out for this game, like just as a surprise? Or I feel like the NFL likes to hype these things up whenever something like that's done. But man, wouldn't that be sweet if they rolled out in those white helmets?
Yeah, I think that if they were ever going to do that, which I do not think they will, because they've had oodles of opportunities, I think they would have teased that a long time ago, mainly because like the hype machine. And I'm thoroughly convinced that the Vikings ownership is adamant or diametrically opposed to doing anything with the helmets, let alone doing anything funky to the jerseys. The whiteout is a big funky thing by their estimation.
Why would they care?
Who?
Why would Ziggy care? Why would the ownership care about that?
Because we never do anything to change the uniforms compared to how some of the other funky stuff that goes down in the league.
Well, we never had a fun coach till now.
Well, maybe the coach will.
Brian, who is, because when you were drafted, like there
Harry
was
Styles?
a uniform change one year. Like who's the owner? Was Wilf the owner of the team when they went to those terrible jerseys that you guys had to wear in the mid to late 2000s?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Reebok ones?
Yeah, like just the
Wolf showed up in 2000
with the whites here.
Yeah. Like it's a good thing. Like we had a lot of badass players rocking them, but man, those things were ugly.
I don't know if owners have anything to do with that, though. Don't you think the league designs that kind of stuff?
You
think a Minnesota like fashion designer is designing it every year?
I think the owners say, let's shake this up. We'll hire the best people to give the design. And the NFL is like, sure, go ahead and do it. I don't think that the NFL says you need to wear this.
Well, then why is there so much crappy merchandise that all is the same from every single team? It's just tweaked a little.
I don't know.
That's why I think it's just an NFL design. Well, I don't know. Whatever. It's all speculation.
We'll have to
I'm sure the NFL comes up with it, but I think the teams probably have a say on whether or not they want to rebrand or whatever. Like look at Daniel Snyder and the Commanders, like how long it took for them to do anything.
True.
Oh, well, he had to greenlight it.
So you mean that I have to blame Ziggy for the Skull Sister merch?
No, I think the fundamental design of the helmet and the uniform, the buck stops here with the ownership. They can say, let's change this up. And then the whole Vikings organization says, well, we'll get cracking and come up with some options. But I don't think that Roger Goodell's like, let's do the Vikings next. I think it's a owner-driven thing because, to Ron's point, they would have forced Doofus Snyder to change the slur many years ago.
You're right.
All right.
Yeah. I kind of like how the helmets have gone unchanged because that, imagine if they were 4-0 instead of 0-4 in the Super Bowls, like that purple helmet with the horn on the side. That's pretty iconic. And you go back to those old videos of them playing with purple people eaters, and I like that they haven't messed with how the helmet looks.
Yannick, I have Vikings 37-27. Bryant said Vikings by 10 or 12. Ron's predicting a blowout, but is sick of being wrong. What do you got, Yannick?
I got 36-20.
Ooh, okay. So yeah, 16. Well, that would feel gigantic by these 2022 standards. All right, Sally, take us off air with your prediction.
How about 34-31?
Oh, so you yeah,
Vikings.
that's right on brand with the high scoring squeaker.
Yep.
All right, group. Anything else?
No, not really.
All right.
It'll be cold out there on Saturday, so
Yeah. Are you tailgating, Sally?
Right now, most likely not. It depends on the wind. If it's just cold, that'll be fine because the heater is so hot. But if it's over 15 miles an hour wind, the tent just doesn't stay put. So
Yeah, well, that's understandable. That's one thing I hear all the time is like the joke or the meme that Midwesterners be like, yeah, it's not so cold if it wasn't for the wind. But it's so unbelievably true that, it transcends a meme because it's just a matter of fact. And yeah.
right, yeah. And obviously, like, our tent is like it's open right there, so we don't really have a buffer, and you only get one parking spot, so it's not like I can put it beside the car or something. So,
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
All right. Well,
We'll see.
we're all picking the Vikings. That's on Christmas Eve. We'll be back next Wednesday to discuss a 12-3 team or 11-4 team.
Yep. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. You guys take it
Merry
easy.
Christmas.
Thanks, Yannick.